So coming to the stage next is Jessica Wawoe, who gets the award for coolest name, in my opinion. She's going to be talking about building tribes with indigenous communities. She's going to, learning indigenous tribes for our communities. Born from two cultures, Jessica made a career out of helping international teams collaborate better. Almost 2 decades with global brands, she is applying her experience and curiosity towards making tribal knowledge applicable to the broader audience. Jessica moved back to the Netherlands, cool place by the way, where she balances family work and travel with her love of yoga and the outdoors. She's also a great parent as well. Let's give it up for Jessica Wawoe. Come on, give it up.
Masha danki pa boa introdução, Ronel, e para receber-me aqui na Portland. Também quero agradecer cada membro de família que ajoia-nos aqui, tanto personal como em espírito. I just spoke Papiamento. It's the language from the island where I was born, in the Caribbean. And you might have picked up that I thank the MC for introducing me, for having me here in Portland, and for all of the relatives or family members that are here in presence and in spirit. I picked this up from indigenous tribes and native Indians who often introduce themselves like this. Now, whether deliberate or not, I tend to feel a sense of intrigue or FOMO when I hear this, when I hear people speak another language in front of me. I don't get that very often because I'm fortunate enough to speak many languages. But when I do, it's a sense of being excluded. And it's this sense of exclusivity that is one of the aspects that I want to bring up of what we can learn in building our own communities. First of all, let me give you some context as to why I feel we can learn from indigenous peoples. The fascination came to me when I was pregnant with our first child. We had just moved to Seattle, far away from family, far away from my mother and other elder women, older generations of women, who I thought would really be able to help me out with this whole new baby thing. I felt I was missing the basic knowledge of what to do, how to sleep, how to eat, how to get the baby to sleep, and even the lullabies that I was sung to as a baby. And I realized later that I was also missing a kind of a spiritual guidance that comes with such a life-changing experience. I fear that in our modern society, there's a wealth of knowledge that we're missing out on because we move away from our elders and we can't always tap into a large, nurturing community of people. In a way, we're all reinventing the wheel on so many things. It's why we come together at forums like these, to learn from each other, to share experiences, so that the next person can build from that instead of having to start from scratch. I was looking for a definition of tribe, and I found this one from Stephen Corey, who is the director of the NGO Survival International, but it's a very anthropological term, because nowadays, and especially in this context, we need to see what's interesting about tribe and tribal in the context of business. Already, many companies and organizations have picked up on it if you just do a quick logo search on tribe. So Seth Godin is one of the people who popularized the term tribe and its thinking in business and in marketing. He talks about a shared interest and a way to communicate. I believe there's a little bit more to it. Going back to that sense of exclusivity, a tribe shares elements within the tribe, internally. And these are elements of recognition that's very obvious for people outside of the tribe, that they are not a part of it. Think of colors or language or tattoos or other symbols. The members of the tribe know that they are a part of this code, and it's made obvious, whether deliberate or not again, that if you're not part of that tribe, you do not belong. Customs and traditions are deeply rooted because they are shared at birth. And this leads me to a story of when I was sent to China to set up a digital agency team for a large phone brand. We were rivaling with the agency called Ogilvy. You might have heard of it. And Ogilvy has red as their brand colors. And I noticed that all of their new recruits would immediately feel like they were Ogilvyans. They would exude this sense of, I'm an Ogilvy person. They would have red pencils, red notebooks, and the color red was infused in a lot of the things that they showed off with. It made me realize how important onboarding is, but also how quickly and how easily, actually, you can make people get that sense of oneness. When we join a company or a new team, we're all keen to obviously make sure that we fit in. And fitting in is extremely important. People are naturally wired to want to be accepted, to want to be included. Now, what I see in tight-knit communities, though, is that there's a deeper bond which holds the group together. And I see that as a difference between fitting in and belonging. Belonging is a safe environment which allows you and even encourages you to be yourself. The people around you will defend you no matter what you do because you are bound together by love. And anthropologists use the word kinship, family, and extended family, treated like family. It becomes irrelevant whether there's blood relations or not, as we can often see with extended family. A good example of this is Obama, who was adopted to the Crow Nation for being one who helps the people across the land. And from another example is from the island where I am in Curaçao, we all call each other swa, which is short for zwager, which means in-law. So in essence, we're always referring to each other as relatives. And I was trying to think of how we can help this sense of belonging come into our communities, and it brought me to Latin America, where in many countries there is a system of godparents. And at birth, for instance, in Panama, you will get 2 godmothers and 1 godfather. And at your teen age or confirmation, for the ones who are Catholic, you'll get another godparent of the same gender as you. And then when you get married, the couple gets another madrina and padrino. And so in this way, at the different stages, you're matched with the right spiritual guidance, kind of like an elaborate buddy system. It's called compadrazgo. And it's also words that we can take to make sure that the group stays together. Closer to home, an example is that for sports jargon, if, for instance, I would be watching an American football game, I would probably feel rather excluded because I don't know the terms. So the message here is not to create a new language or to come up with a secret code, but to be very conscious about the terms and especially the acronyms that you're using in your group and make sure that you create that sense of inclusion, that everybody understands what everybody's talking about. You can also have your own special greeting or a way of saying thank you, which binds a group together. Another topic which I find fascinating is the way groups of people organize themselves. Here you can play with language as well. You can have healers and storytellers. You can have hunters and gatherers. Maybe your content managers are gatherers. And you already know, and we've heard, the importance of empowerment once a role is defined. On that point, though, it's interesting to see how children in a community, in an indigenous tribes, are often very independent at a very young age. There's a lot of learning from example and implicit learning. And this way, the whole community is actually sharing their learning experiences. Sorry, their learning responsibilities. Last solstice, I had the privilege of being invited to a Sundance in South Dakota. It was cold and it was raining, and I was wearing outdoor gear. And I realized that the elders, the Dakota elders, didn't appreciate my dress code. And they were urging me to wear a shawl around my waist to cover my legs because I didn't have a long skirt. And I got a bit upset with the person who invited me. As, you know, why didn't you tell me about this dress code? And I was taken aside by some of the women who said, well, first of all, nobody's angry, it's all fine. But secondly, this is also part of the culture. The elders and the chiefs don't necessarily tell you everything. They're not always the ones telling you everything, because this way, everybody can be a teacher. This brings us to leadership. In this day and age, when many people and many companies are adapting holacracy and leaderless teams, I'd like to challenge this based on the insights of indigenous tribes. Ranking is actually a very human trait, and it's important for someone to step up as a leader when the going gets tough. It doesn't mean we need a dictator. Many subtle leadership styles are found that work marvelously. A chief can be the poorest of them all, his primary focus being on the well-being of the nation and his tribe, and not himself. And this selflessness is also leading by example. Good deeds are generally more respected than possessions and wealth. On the other hand, prized possessions, like a ceremonial or a sacred item, can also become an indicator of rank and honor. Sorry? Yeah, I think. Yeah. Wait, I'm going back. That's it. Sorry. I'm so nervous. Okay, so the artifacts. This is a driftwood sign which I had made with describing some of the roles that we had in our team for Wunderman Team Microsoft. So this was a global agency operations role where I was in. And we had these made, and these were handed off from one person who had that role to the other. So this is an interesting, and as I was looking for an image to show this to you guys, I actually realized that they're still doing this, and I started this in 2006, so that was pretty. So maybe you have a chief, or no chief, or maybe you have a guru, which is somebody who's inspiring and motivating, and that in itself, I don't want to have an opinion about, but it can be tricky to organize yourselves behind a person. It can even be creepy. But for teams and people who organize themselves behind a belief, I really believe there's many aspects of that we can learn from. Looking at history, at how religions have organized themselves and manifested themselves over large groups of people, and some still do. Think of the Jewish community, who wherever they travel, they know they're going to be taken in by their community. There's always someone there. What can we do with our communities instead of announcing yourself as a guru tomorrow is consider some more subtle ways of introducing some mysticism into our communities, and maybe even some spirituality in how we work together. One of the ways we can manifest our culture is with rites and rituals. You might know, for instance, Movember. Coming up, it's Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And people, well, the men grow their facial hair to show they're backing up the cause. And it's interesting to see the unity that everybody feels that is also participating in that, because they're all backing the same cause, and there's this recognizable feature of the mustache. Maybe in Portland it's a bit less obvious because there's already lots of beards. But rites and rituals can be introduced at any time, and in time, they might become a tradition. Let's come up with our own examples. I would like to have, obviously, flip-flop day or barefoot day. And I like to think of rituals that bring things back to the earthy basics. So think of what you can do in a circle, or something that mimics a campfire, or something to do with the sun, or the moon, or trees, or feathers, or chanting, or meditating. Or maybe I'm taking this too far. You can probably share some things on the Facebook channel, that would be fun. And I can't stress enough the importance, even if your team is virtual, your community is virtual, of gatherings and actually getting together and finding time not only to talk about the agenda and the important items of strategy and planning and what have you, but also for informal bonding and play. We shouldn't forget that really important factor, which is humor. We tend to take ourselves very seriously, and our work, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's all relative. We should actually get to work knowing that we're going to have a good time, right? And I think if you can bring some lightness to the madness, people will be rallying behind you more easily. If you look at documentaries, you wouldn't see the people being bored or reluctant to do, in Indigenous tribes, reluctant to do what they need to do. They're happy, they're comfortable, and they have time for play. Apparently, before we started mass agriculture and living in fixed permanent villages, we had a higher quality of life. I got this from the book Sapiens by Yuval Harari. And he says that in those times, people spent 4 or 5 hours a day to work on shelter and food gathering. And the rest of the day, what did they do? They would chat, they would hang out, they would listen to stories, and they would play. So I feel we can take note from Indigenous peoples on how to give everyone a strong sense of inclusion that makes people be themselves and that makes bring the best version of yourself to the table. We can achieve this by implementing some rites and rituals which only you do, and ensuring our language is understood within the tribe. We need to generate a sense of pride so that your tribe will show off its colors. And I challenge you, bring a little mysticism into your team, your community, a little magic. Knowing your place in the team, in the community, is like knowing your place in the world. If you know your purpose and you are rooted in the community that you belong to, that's very powerful. Knowing that you're in it together, that this is your tribe, that we are all one. Masha danki.